Welcome back to your daily dose of camera content. Today, I want to talk about the Lumix Leica 12 to 60 millimeter lens for Micro Four Thirds. But before we get started, like this video, hit the subscribe button and consider joining the channel. Channel members get exclusive access to Filmmaker Alchemy, behind the scenes lessons and insights on the business of video production. Learn how to turn your content into gold. This lens is already quite popular, so I probably don't need to call out how great it is and why, but I'm going to do that anyway because why not? Let's talk about it. It's a fun lens and probably one of the most versatile, best lenses you can get for Micro Four Thirds. Yes, this is a Micro Four Thirds lens, so you would use this on something like the G9 Mark II, the GH7, or even an old school GH5 or GH4 if you still have one laying around. Micro Four Thirds. This is not full frame. It's not for the S cameras. This is Micro Four Thirds only. And 12 to 60 in full frame equivalent would be 24 to 120. So keep that in mind when we're talking about it because that focal range is quite useful. I'm not going to show really photos or videos in this discussion. It's not a review. I don't know how valuable that is. I know people always like to see that kind of stuff, but it's out there. There's plenty of it. You can kind of just listen to what I have to say about this lens, why it might be right for you, or maybe why you might want to stay away from it. Because there are some drawbacks and considerations for why you might not want to use this. But if I had to recommend just a one-size-fits-all general purpose, this is going to be the lens for Micro Four Thirds. 12 to 60, huge, incredible zoom range. And look at the size of this thing. It's tiny, it's lightweight, and all things considered, it's actually kind of affordable. It's not cheap. It's not the cheapest Micro Four Thirds lens you can find, but in the grand scheme of lenses, there's certainly ones much more expensive, especially lenses that say Leica on them. Looking at those full frame Leica lenses, spending $9,000 on a lens, that's ridiculous. Okay, this is much more budget friendly. However, that does come with a trade-off or a compromise, depending on how you look at it, because that's the thing with lenses. You know, this is not the fastest lens. The aperture is 2.8 to f4 at the long end. So what you sacrifice in terms of aperture, you gain in terms of size and weight. And that is always the trade-off with aperture. The faster the aperture, the bigger and heavier the lens is generally going to be. So if speed is your desire, you want the fastest aperture possible, you want a lens for Micro Four Thirds that says Leica on it, well, in that case, I would recommend what I've always recommended, which is the 10 to 25. That lens is awesome. It's more expensive. It's a much shorter focal range. It's bigger, it's heavier, but it's faster. It's a 1.7. Considering this is a 2.8 to an f4, it's always a trade-off. You got to pick your poison. Which one do you want? You can't have it all. If you want a general purpose Micro Four Thirds lens that's actually like fast enough for most situations, this is the one to get. There's also the 12 to 35 f2.8, which is basically the same size, honestly. But the problem with that is it maxes out at 35. And if you can get those extra, 25-ish millimeters on the long end going all the way to 60, and the only downside is that it goes to an f4, I'll take it. At 60 millimeters on Micro Four Thirds, again, full frame equivalent would be 120 millimeters. So, that's significant. That's a good reach on full frame. Now, it's not, super telephoto like you might use for birding or, I don't know, any kind of like super sports maybe, even some weddings. Maybe you'd want something with, a lot more reach. 60, though, will still get you there most of the time. 120 millimeter full frame equivalent, 60 millimeter on Micro Four Thirds. And look at the size. You're not going to get that on a full frame camera. You're just not. And that's the benefits, one of them, of Micro Four Thirds is that it's easier to reach further with a smaller kit. And generally that also means it's kind of more affordable from time to time. And the beauty of this lens is that it's not just telephoto, being 60 millimeters in long end. You can go as wide as 12. And I should mention that this is a stabilized lens as well. So you get those extra benefits of the dual IS. Now, it seems to be the point at which we're kind of at diminishing returns with the in-body image stabilization, whether dual IS is better or worse. Like I don't know. It probably varies from camera to camera, lens to lens, but it is a stabilized lens in addition to the body as well. So if you have a camera that supports it, this is a lens that's going to give you that extra little bit of stabilization that maybe only really matters on that longer end at that 60 millimeter end. But I would recommend try it out, see what's going to work for you, see what, your camera. Sometimes the Lumix lenses don't play nice with the Olympus bodies and vice versa. I have some Olympus Micro Four Thirds lenses that don't get all the best features on my Lumix bodies. So this is kind of one of those. It's meant for Lumix. I would definitely say that. And I really, again, just don't think you can go wrong with something at this price point that gives you so much out of it. You're going to sacrifice a little bit in terms of shallow depth of field, which Micro Four Thirds is not known for. If you're a bokeh junkie, you're going to want to go full frame. But even Micro Four Thirds, you can get some really nice, beautiful bokeh, shallow depth of field. It just might not be this lens. You might have to look slightly elsewhere, get one of the faster primes. There's certainly the 42.5 Leica lens. That's a 1.2, super fast, also stabilized prime lens for Micro Four Thirds. One I would highly recommend if you're after that 85 millimeter kind of portrait lens. Micro Four Thirds has it in that 42.5 f1.2. Really awesome, amazing lens, plenty sharp, great detail. This is not that. This is not the bokeh lens. This is the general purpose, get everything kind of lens. Super wide, super long. I don't know that I have much more to say about it other than it's also nice and lightweight too. So it's not going to bog your rig down. Benefits of Micro Four Thirds. Everything has a place. It's not what's the best, because usually if you're chasing the best, you're going to end up spending $100,000 on an Airy or something like that. If you want to get the most value out of your gear, out of your equipment, that return on investment, that's where I start looking at stuff like this, because it gets the job done. It gets almost every job done. 12 to 60, huge, huge focal range. Think of it like a 24 to 105 full frame equivalent, right? Typically those would be like an f4, although Sigma now makes a 28 to 105. That's a 2.8. So, results can vary depending on the brand, the mount, the camera body itself, what you need out of it. If you're having to crop in because maybe you're shooting with a camera body that crops at 4K 60, or you need the extra stabilization, you're also dealing with some cropping there. Lots of variables. So you really have to kind of target it to what your priorities are. But for Micro Four Thirds, 12 to 60 is a great focal range. And going from a 2.8 to f4 certainly will give you decent light gathering capabilities in most situations. It's not going to shoot in the dark. Maybe there's circumstances where you'd want a faster lens, but those exist as well. They just tend to be a lot bigger and heavier than this one. You could take this anywhere, travel. This just like pops right in a backpack, in a bag, anywhere. It's just tiny, simple, easy. The faster stuff is bigger and heavier. It's just the way it is. It's optics, it's physics. It's the way light works. So at this point, are you going to get it? Probably not, because you probably already have it, because this lens is super popular. But I want to talk about it just for at least maybe there's one or two people who didn't know about it, weren't thinking of it, didn't realize Micro Four Thirds had such a versatile lens. It does exist. You can get it. And like I said, size, weight, price, it all kind of makes sense. This is what I think the value of Micro Four Thirds is. And this is where Leica and Lumix shine when they make things like this. Versatile, functional, affordable. Like that to me is value. You add all that up, that is true value. Spending $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 on a lens just because it has a brand on it, not as much fun. Not as much value there. So when the value shines through, that's what I like to call out. So I wanted to point out, do you have a 12 to 60? Are you still shooting Micro Four Thirds? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts.